guest is Dr. David Padgett from Tennessee State University, who's given us information relative to chocolate cities in crisis and an analysis in terms of some of the problems that many of these cities face. And of course, Dr. Padgett, let's continue our discussion. I think you were dealing with Atlanta before we had our second commercial break. Let's continue there.
Yeah, Atlanta is truly a tale of two cities. It's known as Black Mecca, one of the major civil rights movement cities. And what really put Atlanta on the top of our list for Black enterprise was economic opportunity, entrepreneurship, and obviously Black Enterprise Magazine appeals to those types of readers. And what set our survey apart was that we actually had readers respond and tell what they thought, and then we combined that with statistical data. So one side of Atlanta is the wealthy, you know, the Gwinnett County, which is just part of the metro area. Then there's the other Atlanta, which leads the nation in crime, which has pockets of poverty, which has all kinds of inequity in terms of transit, public transit. And so it's almost a two-faced city. But yet, Atlanta, again, never fails. I mean, more Black people moved to Atlanta over the past 10 years, I think, than any other city in the United States. And Black African Americans have flocked there by the hundreds of thousands, literally. And so as long as Atlanta is a place where Black people see opportunity, they're going to go there. Is it going to spread throughout the entire Black population? Well, that remains to be seen. Now, Detroit, the next city, next chocolate city is obviously you know, the home of Motown, but it's also the city that when we teach urban studies, it's always used as a model for urban decay. Detroit has been bleeding people. People have been leaving Detroit in droves. Detroit fell below 1 million people during this past census for the first time in 50 years. And it's literally, people are getting out of Detroit. It's like rats off of a sinking ship. Detroit, now with the automotive industry having its problems, things are getting even worse in Detroit. And they're almost, and they've got a young, dynamic mayor there, Kwame Kilpatrick, and he's young and he's energetic, and he's going to need to be energetic because that city has lots and lots of problems. And so, and I don't know, I mean, I'm almost speechless when it comes to Detroit.
You're very pessimistic in terms of what...
Now, Detroit, as I said, made the list the first year because we weren't as scientific with the survey as we would have been in other years. But Detroit performed poorly in almost all areas that we looked at. We looked at crime, we looked at economic opportunity, even cost of living. No matter what category we looked at. One of the categories we look at also is quality of child care. With 70% of our children being raised in single-parent households, primarily women, child care is an issue in our community. And if a city is not making some moves or making child care readily available, good, and giving those opportunities to women, we're not going to be happy. And I think Detroit was one of those cities that performed very poorly in that regard. Now, Birmingham is a city that made the list in 2004, didn't make it this year, purely due to lack of participation on the part of the respondents. We have to have a cutoff point for the minimum number of responses to have a good sampling pool. But the people who did respond responded very favorably for Birmingham. And if you think of it, it's really unusual. I mean, Birmingham was once known as Bombingham. It was once known as you know, just at least the last place you wanted to be Black in the United States, almost was Birmingham if you were going to live in a city, maybe 40 years ago. And now it's this, it seems to be more progressive. It's a heavily, almost 75% Black city. It has its problems, and I'd probably say of all these cities, Birmingham is probably the least that's in crisis, but being in the South, being in this part of the country, they have issues going on there as far as health and economic opportunity, because this part of the country, we're in the heart attack corridor or the coronary corridor, And so Birmingham falls into that category. You have, obviously being in the South, we're lagging behind somewhat in education. And so there are those challenges. But of all these cities, other than Atlanta, Birmingham is a surprise city, a pleasant surprise. But do they still have the crime there? Yes. Do they still have problems there? Yes. But it's the one city that might have some answers to some of the problems that we are seeing in some of these other cities.
You know, Dr. Padgett, when you talk